Hello there, it's Riikka Kovasin here with another video for A.B.Studio. This time I'm using one of the new collections to make a layout. I'm using Around the World paper collection in this project. Around the World has these lovely vintage themed patterns and, well, maps and tickets and names of places, and I'm choosing one of the sheets for my background. Even though I love the way the print is, I'm using a little bit of white gesso on top to make it less contrasting. So it's more like a background and not as visible because I want the full power to go to the photo. I'm using a silicone brush to spread the gesso, and when I have covered the whole sheet, I'm using a heat tool to dry it. Then on top I'm using matte acrylic paint. The brand I'm using is PaperArtsy, and I'm diluting the paint heavily. So it's more like a watercolor, but instead of using watercolor, I chose to go with acrylic, as I'm not sure in this stage what I'm layering on top, so the color won't react to any wet mediums that might come on top. I'm also using my water jug to kind of make imprints with the base, so it looks like these markings of a teacup or coffee cup. Then on top I'm layering patterns with different stencils and inks. First I'm using a brown ink together with a number stencil. This one is ID-296, and then a little bit later on black ink through two different stencils. One has kind of a heart pattern and the other one has plus signs. All of these three patterns are really versatile, so they go to every project. And here the heart and plus signs kind of bring a bit more modern flair, whereas the letters is a little bit more vintagey in my opinion. I'm also layering some stamping on top using an alphabet stamp, and the same black ink I used with the stencil, so this one is just black archival ink. Then I scribble a few words on top using a black paint marker. Then I'm starting to make embellishments. For that I'm first painting a sheet of watercolor paper with different watercolors. I'm using kind of a tea-toned or honey-toned color scheme. I'm laying two lighter colors to the base and then make splashes on top so the colors kind of bleed into each other, and then I dry the paper. While I have my heat tool on, I'm also using embossing powder to color one of the chipboards. This one is ID-276. I'm using a mix of different embossing powders, first sprinkling a little bit of gold and red embossing powder to the inked chipboard, and then cover the whole thing using a brown embossing powder. This way the color has a little bit of variation. Then I heat the powder to seal it. For the watercolor paper, I'm then turning it into leaves using a leaf stencil and a black paint marker, a Posca marker. I'm just using the stencil to draw the leaves on top and then reinforce or draw again those lines without the stencil, so it's more freehand, and then I just cut the leaves loose from the paper, and thus having my own leaf embellishments for the layout. Then it's time to put everything together. I have my chipboard done, I have my leaves done, so it's time to make cluster behind the photo and then start embellishing. As you can see, I adhered my photo to a frame cut from Around the World paper sheet, making that a little frame for it. I also cut pieces from one of the sheets in the paper collection for the layering behind the photo, but I'm also mixing in an old sewing pattern I received in an ATC exchange. To keep the vintage and a little bit grungy feeling going, I'm using brown ink to ink around the edges of the paper pieces. I'm also crumbling them a little bit so they are not laying flat, but have a little bit of texture and dimension through that. I make the layers on my hand, then use an just office stapler to secure the layers together, and then use foam tape to adhere the cluster and the photo in place. Then I'm adding the leaves. I'm kind of introducing them to the layout and thinking about the position, but they seem a little bit bare. I want something, a little detail still. So I'm using leftover watercolor paper from where I turn into those leaves, and then the stapler and staple the leaves put, and then adhere that piece of paper next to the photo. So there's the staples, just a little bit of extra, so it adds a little bit of something, because just adding them underneath wasn't the thing. Then I snip the chipboard piece in two so I can use it on both sides of the photo, and add a little metal paper clip to the photo as well. I then add an eyelet to the tag that actually has an eyelet pattern already, and thread a cotton twine through it. Then, inspired by the frame I used for my photo, I'm adding a little bit of tape to the layout. I'm mixing washi tape and just cotton medical tape, and adding little pieces near the composition, just drawing the eye in and kind of including those elements that are in the papers also to my embellishing. As there's staples near the leaves, I'm adding a couple to secure the twine near to the edge of the paper and trim excess twine off. As a last detail, I'm then adding a glass little dome near the photo, as there seems to be an empty spot. Here's a photo of the finished layout and a couple of detailed shots. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please consider subscribing. Thank you. See you again. Bye.